Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of XenTegra and Air podcast series. I'm your host, Indrajeet Ghorpade, Director Solution Engineering for XenTegra India. And I have with me Mr. Simon Townsend, Field CTO with IGEL. And especially today, we have one more guest with us, John Moody. He is Director for Pre-Sales for UK, Ireland, Emerging Markets and APAC with IGEL. Hey, hi Simon. Hi John. How are you?
Hey, hey, Indrajeet, I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How?
Hey,
Good.
G, great to be here.
Yeah. Okay. So,
How's your week been?
it
Busy?
was good. It was busy and like as I said, right, a lot of things are going on. IGEL is now like getting that piece in Indian market as well. There are a lot of POCs happening, a lot of customer discussions. IGEL and like complementing technologies around IGEL, especially in end user computing and digital workspace. So a lot of things are happening, meetings, POCs. So it was a busy week, I'll say.
Good. Good, good,
How
good. I think
about
I
you?
was
What
yeah, I was
about you?
just I was just saying to you guys before we hit record, we do every year we do a piece of work with a charity called Crisis for Christmas, and it helps make sure that homeless people in the UK, particularly in London, but I think it's spread out now, but homeless people in the UK have got somewhere to go and get a bed and get food during the Christmas period, right? There's a lot of homeless people on the street. So there's a charity called Crisis for Christmas. And we, from an IT point of view, help with that probably now for I think the last 5 or 6 years. So they put um, devices into homeless shelters, they put devices into call centers. All of it runs iGel. um, all of the operators have obviously got access to things like Microsoft Teams and Office that helps them communicate with each other and make sure they can put someone who is homeless into temporary accommodation. And then also in where the sites are, where the homeless people can come to, there is also terminals, which allows people to, you know, very basic things like browse the internet, read the
Mm.
news, try and get in contact with other people, etc. So we've been helping them deploy that. We do that every single year. They do a phenomenal job at they sort of start in October and they start rolling out all of these devices. It's been quite interesting because historically they used to use iGel to access a Citrix infrastructure and everything was done through Citrix. And for the last 2 years, it's actually just been iGel accessing Office 365. So it's been using iGel as an operating system with a secure web browser just to do the Teams calls and all the planning, etc. So yeah, fingers crossed that that goes well, and we at least help get some people a decent night's sleep and some food over the Christmas period. Quite important.
That's
So
actually a very good thing, very good initiative. So I think we have a common ground in that case, XenTegra and IGIL, because under XenTegra group of companies, even we have an organization called Computers for Community. So
yep,
under this organization, we are doing pretty similar things, right? For underprivileged, homeless people, we provide computing hardware, then couple of trainings, right? Educating people about technology. So a lot of activities we under that particular entity, the Computers for Community. Even we are doing a lot of such things, like for the community. So it's actually a good thing, and like as we all are working, we all are growing. Like it is always we should remember for the like people who actually in need, right? So yes, so it is a good initiative. Like even we are doing
it,
the same with Centrica.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
good. So
So yes, I think yes, someone has to start. So like please let me know, right? How shall we proceed further? Like so, we have a new guest today. Mr. John. And so just want to understand, like, because he is the person with that team, which is actually basically the feet on ground, doing a lot of technical evaluations, POCs, testing, a lot of customer interaction. So I think let's give a chance today to John to speak more about his experiences. Before that, I think Simon, either you right give us some background or like some reason, right, for onboarding John on this particular podcast.
This should be
And
interesting.
then, yes, yes. And in that way, we'll take this conversation ahead. So, for our listeners, today we are going, it will not be specific to any technology or like specific to any announcement or like specific to any market news. Like, we will be discussing about something like about IGEL, the interaction. It will be more of a conversation between all three of us.
Yeah,
Sounds
sure.
good.
All right, good. So, yeah, so I've got some news. And I think I've spoken to you about this already, Indrajeet. But as you know, I've spent the last 5 years at IGEL, and I've had an absolute blast looking after marketing, and then obviously being their field CTO. Um, I am moving on at the end of this year, and I will be starting a very similar role to this one at your friends at Control Up in the new year. So I think this will
Oh,
be my penultimate podcast with you. And so one of the things that I was very keen to do was to make sure that we carried this podcast on. Hopefully, Indrajeet, I'm still going to be speaking with you on a regular basis and still doing some podcasts. Um, I'm still obviously going to be doing a lot of work with both yourselves and also with IGEL. I still very much believe that um, there is a place for IGEL in this world as an alternative secure operating system. But more important than that, I wanted to introduce John into the mix. John Moody has been with IGEL for some time now and is the pre-sales director for your particular region. I've had the privilege of working with John for the last probably 15, 16, 17 years, something like
Easy,
oh,
that. But
easy.
yeah, I'll let him talk to that. But I thought it'd be a good idea. Let's get John on. Let's start the conversation with John. Let our listeners learn a little bit about what John is doing and what his thoughts are, and then that allows you to then carry this conversation on into 2024, and hopefully you'll have me back on in the near future. So yeah, John, over to you. Perhaps introduce yourself and tell us where you've been and what you do.
Where have I
first of
been?
all, John, excuse me for a second. First of all, Simon, this is kind of shocking news to all of us. And so this is kind of your like last couple of episode, right, for this series. And it is like, so we actually continued, right, almost this is now this episode we are recording, it's almost 12th episode in this series. So it was very good conversation with you till now, and we are not going to leave you that easy. We want you or will involve you in upcoming episodes, though you are in like consular shoes, but we'll definitely invite you and we'll make this collaborative kind of a podcast where we'll talk about IGEL as well as Control Up together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. People never go far in this industry, Introjeet.
No.
They
Yes.
never go far. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, John, to interrupt you. Please.
No, no, and I think to Simon's point there, obviously we've known internally at IGEL for a couple of weeks or so that Simon's leaving us. Now, I was speaking to one of my guys in the team the other day, and the first thing he said, "Well, Control Up runs on IGEL. So we can't get rid of Simon that easily. So, there's a great integration there with the Control DX product, I think.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to working with Simon again in another disguise, which will be fun. So yeah, a little bit about me. John Moody. I live in the Nottingham in the UK. So if you know the UK, we're the bit in the middle. Um, been here for crikey, 19 years or so. as far as the EU space is, I've worked in this industry for over 20 years now. Back in the olden days when we were deploying these things called published desktops, out to, in my case, out to a university environment. That's kind of where I cut my teeth. I've then worked I've been the end customer, I've been the consultant working for a partner, I've done the architect, I've done the managed service. And then roughly, I don't know, crikey, it'd be 7-8 years ago, I actually joined Citrix. And I worked in pre-sales at Citrix for a good 7-8 years. And then I joined IGEL July this year initially as UKI pre-sales manager. And then last week, I've taken on APAC and emerging markets as well. So not only doubled the size of my team, but get to pick up some new and interesting areas as well. So I'm genuinely really excited to be working with XenTegra. You're going to be one of our key focus partners out in that part of the world. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know you all a lot better.
What
20 years.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Again, we had that clash again. Sorry for that. So 20 years is like 20 years in this industry. So you actually seen that evolution, right? From those old PCs, old endpoints, and
Yeah.
till now, like IGEL and the edge computing and the edge OS, or like now DAS, the desktop as a service. So you have actually seen the entire journey of end user computing as it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from the days, I mean, we used to, at the university I used to work at, we were using the old Citrix DOS client to get to a Metaframe 1.8 desktop. And then it was about secure access to applications. So I did a big project rolling out, if anybody remembers SAP GUI and JD Edwards, rolling those clients out across Europe. That was a big project. And then it was all about, it's kind of security. And then we went through, this is the year of VDI, and we had all that thing going on in the early 2000s. And I think, fundamentally, we are still realistically trying to do the same thing, right? Which is
Yep.
get some apps to some users. And I think the way that we do it has obviously changed and evolved, and the different methods of consumption. But I think, fundamentally, it's still pretty much the same principle, if you like. So it's an exciting time at the moment, though. I don't think I've seen this much disruption. Simon, I don't know if you got a comment on that, but I don't think I've seen so much disruption in our industry over the last couple of years, particularly what's going on with Citrix, what's now recently happening with VMware, the strides that Microsoft are making. It's an interesting time at the moment. And it's kind of nice being at IGEL, almost like kind of to the outside of some of that. But I'm genuinely really excited about next year. I think it's going to be really interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would definitely agree with you on the point about the apps, John. You know, it's always been, people say it's all about the apps, but it has always been about the apps, right?
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, if somebody can't access their applications and data, then they can't do a job. And, the desktop is one of those, the virtualized desktop is one of those things that we need because that's where the app sits. But actually, someone doesn't necessarily need the desktop in most cases, right? If that makes sense.
Yep.
It's just a way of getting to an application. And it's interesting. So I think I've said this before, but when you sort of go and speak to, you take IGEL's top 100 customers, and probably 60% of them don't even see IGEL. They just log straight on and they get a published desktop. But we're starting to see that change again now, and more people are logging on to the IGEL desktop, seeing the IGEL start menu and the date and the time in the bottom right-hand corner, etc., and then using published applications and or SaaS-based applications.
And the thing I'd add to that, Simon, is I'm being very comfortable in doing so as well. I think
Yeah.
certainly when I started out at the beginning of my career, from an end user perspective and what they were using, it was only Windows, right?
Yeah.
You had Windows at home, you had Windows at work or at university. That was just, your life, right? It was locally installed Office, it was access a file share. But now I think end users have changed as well. You know, if I look at just the operating systems I'm running in my house, we've got everything from, you know, Windows on my son's gaming computer, Mac OS on my daughter's laptop, there's Alexa voice assistant, my TV runs Android, my phone runs Apple iOS. We're in a multi-OS world now, and it's almost acceptable now. And I think this is the bit where maybe the world of work is changing, is it doesn't always need to be Windows, right? And I think what we're now thankfully focusing on, and I think you're going to see this, Simon, as you sort of go into that DEX space. Actually, what the important thing is like getting users to be able to work, right? It's allowing users to, you know, be their best selves at work and be more productive. I see just in my own home, my partner struggling to access work via a VPN or accessing a remote file share and stuff like that. And all she wants to do is just do her job, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't care about what the OS is, doesn't particularly care what the application is, just, you know, needs to do her job, right? And I think our job these days in EUC is how do we reduce that friction, right? How do we make work easier?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Agree with that. Agree with that completely. Yeah, apps are just apps at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I don't care whether it's a cloud, you know, as an end user, I don't care if it's cloud-based. I don't care if it's SaaS. I don't care if it's on my mobile. I don't, you know, you know, you and I both use Concur for our expenses here at IGEL. I don't care that it's a SaaS-based app. I just want my expenses paying. I want to request my PTO through Bamboo. I want to, you know, access Salesforce or Workday. I don't particularly care that it's not a Windows app, and I don't particularly care that it's running on a desktop. I just need to do that workflow, right? I just need to do that piece of work. And I think this is what I've seen, that change in how we work. And then some things don't change, do they? You know, we are all still very much inbox driven, right? We're still driven by our Outlook calendars, even though there's hundreds of workflow applications out there that's supposed to help and guide us through our day. I still think that world of enterprise work certainly Outlook driven, right? Which is a shame, but that the way that we do work now is different. There's so many more apps, so many more different ways of accessing them. I think that's now our challenge, right? How do we present that? And it isn't always Windows on the endpoint. You know, it isn't, I need a quick, efficient, easy way of giving and providing that access. I don't always need to go for that, as I used to do, that Windows 2000 desktop, God forbid. You know, these days that's not as important, I don't think.
Yeah. I'd agree. We were in with Citrix. I don't think Citrix will mind us talking about this, but Indrajeet, myself and John were in with Citrix last week, and you know, they are doing very well at the moment. You know, amongst all of the let's say FUD and the noise that has been around, that's been around for some time about, you know, how successful they were or were not going to be. That team is rocking at the moment, and a lot of the customers that I'm speaking to as well are very, very happy with some of the innovation and the enhancements that they're bringing to the product. So, but the reason I bring it up is, you know, we started this conversation about repurposing devices, helping out the community, etc. I think to John's point, what was quite interesting as we spoke to them last week is that they understood completely what IGEL did from a thin OS, thin client point of view in the past to access Citrix and getting a published desktop. They understand completely how we could repurpose an old Wise device and give it new life and connect into a new Citrix cloud infrastructure. But the real big thing that we were talking to them about was IGEL on new equipment as well. And a lot of their accounts that were looking at IGEL were actually looking to the likes of HP and Lenovo and LG to say, what net new devices can we buy which are more cost effective than a mobile workstation, but a 500, 600, 700 euro laptop that could be built to last and that was super, super secure. And that really got us into this whole conversation about, well, it's not just about connecting into a published desktop. It can be about secure private access. It can be about how does IGEL and Citrix work together to implement zero trust network architecture, provide a user access to all of their applications, perhaps through a Citrix client, but also perhaps through a Citrix secure web browser as well, right?
Yeah.
And so I think things are, to John's point, things are just about to get very, very exciting because there is lots and lots of disruption and new ways of thinking about how we deploy applications. And it's sometimes very different for, let's say, 3 different users, right? There's 3 of us on this call now. One of us could be a worker who does nothing but connect in Citrix every day and work from a virtual desktop. And their web-based applications, their Windows applications, and all of their productivity tools are delivered via that desktop.
Yeah.
What the other one of us could be, quite easily, and me and John do this a lot, we roam around the world with our IGEL laptop, which, by the way, now lasts about 12 hours a day because IGEL's running on it, which is great. And all of our presentations and all of the work that we do is all done via the web browser.
Yeah.
John, your presentation you delivered last week was PowerPoint inside Chromium on top of IGEL.
We bearing in mind we did a full day at Citrix there, and I was on the big screens in the Citrix Paddington office in London, and it was the LG gram I'd taken with me that day, and it didn't even break sweat. I mean, I was you didn't know, right? You couldn't tell that I wasn't running Windows until the bit where I came out of PowerPoint and went, "Hey, I'm running on IGEL OS," and I think this is the thing, right? I think in the olden days, if I'm gonna, put my shirt and slippers on and talk like an old man, you used to start with your Citrix project, right? Or your VMware Horizon project or your Microsoft project. And the last thing that you thought about was what endpoint. That would be your last mile of the conversation. And I think with the disruption in the market that we're seeing now, actually, we've gone 360 on that and come right back. Actually, no, I need to now start with the endpoint. And I think to your point, Simon, whereby there's 3 of us and we all probably work in slightly different ways, that's the thing. And we need to have that choice. Gone of those days when IT could dictate, you will use this published Windows desktop or you will use this specific hardware device. Those days are gone now. And we need to, particularly that newer. I always say the new generation of workers coming through, but I'm thinking I'm really old, but I still want choice. In fact, I demand choice.
Yep.
And there are that flexibility in the work market now. People will leave due to poor IT, right? So how do we, as the EUC community and as IGEL and as XenTegra, how do we provide end users with that rich experience that also gives them that choice over the device they're using and where and how they do it without then, compromising things like you say, Simon, like security and user experience, right? That's where I think, and I go back to my first point of that's we years ago we talked about the consumerization of IT, and I still think that is a journey that we're on.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone we should also get on this podcast, Indrajeet, is a gentleman called James Millington. I don't know whether you've met James yet. But James is ex Citrix. He's ex VMware. He's done a load of work in healthcare, deploying end user compute around Imprivata. He is now our product marketing or VP of product marketing. And he's a great guy. He would definitely be someone who I'd recommend getting on the podcast as well. But he was talking to your point, John, last week. What does he call it? He says everybody is looking at a modern application strategy,
Yeah.
but they are using a legacy endpoint strategy.
Yes.
And it's quite interesting when you sort of expand that out and break that up into what in terms of what you were just saying there, John, right? We all talk about moving as many of our applications to SaaS, moving our infrastructure into the cloud, possibly moving our desktops out there. We talk about clever technologies like App Attach. We've spoken in the past, Indrajeet, about SaaS-based applications being accessed by enterprise browsers like Island, which I know you're working with as well, and Citrix have got a secure browser as well. So we talk about all these applications. We talk about offloading of video and audio for Teams and Zoom so that it performs really, really well. And then to John's point, the last thing we typically think about is, we actually need to give the employee something to work on with like a mouse or a keyboard and a screen. And then we just go back to, we'll just spend £1,200 and buy them a new laptop. And it's like, you've spent all of that time and that money thinking about how best to deploy applications in a modern way. And then the endpoint comes along and it's like, we just do what we've been doing for the last 25 years.
Yeah. And what are we deploying to that endpoint? We put Windows on it.
Yeah.
Right? We've literally spent millions virtualizing it, getting it going in the cloud or on premises and what have you. And we've spent thousands on consultancy to then go, well, let's put it back on the endpoint as well. And it's nonsensical. It doesn't make sense. And I've always believed Windows as an endpoint OS, it belongs in the data center. I've always, kind of why I do what I do is because I don't like Windows on the endpoint. It's too hard. It's hard for me as an IT professional. Never mind, an IT user who's got a proper job and is just trying to get a day's work done. It's tough. And one of the things that attracted me to IGEL and my reason for joining is the simplicity. It doesn't need to be hard. A simple doesn't mean bad experience. The positive experience I've had since I've personally adopted IGEL OS, and it really came to life, like I say, as we went to Citrix. It's just so easy to use. You don't need weeks and weeks of end user training because it's familiar. But I think part of that, the reason its familiarity works is because we are, we're not used to just one OS out there today, right? I could pick up a MacBook and I could probably get my way around it. I could do the same with IGEL OS, right? And Windows itself is, right? Look at the difference between 10 and 11. I mean, that is that UI experience. But I think we're used to and comfortable with that now.
We are. People definitely adapt significantly quicker. I tell you what, John, I'd completely forgotten that there was a DOS client for Citrix back in the day.
Do you want would you like a funny story about the ICA DOS client?
Go on.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So you may have to explain to some of the listeners what is DOS, but we'll let them work that out.
Yeah.
You need to Google DOS.
At least the listeners of next generation, right? Or the current generation. Because we have seen DOS, we worked on DOS, but like for the current audience, current generation, maybe you have to explain what is DOS.
What is DOS? So DOS was the command line operating system before Windows. And Citrix wrote a DOS client that would then allow you to boot straight into Windows. And we used to use a tool called Norton Ghost, which was a way of copying a hard drive. And that's how we'd rapidly roll out a student lab. So we'd have 200 PCs in a university library. We'd then build one and then copy it around. And there was a fault in the Citrix load balancing algorithm. And basically, because all these DOS clients effectively had the same hard drive serial number, because we Norton ghosted it, none of the servers would balance correctly. And we spent 2 solid nights, 48 hours without sleep trying to fix that one. But there you go. So
wow. There you go.
That's one from the trenches. Indrajeet, if you want any more of these stories, I'll come on your podcast every week. I've got loads.
I tell you what, though, it is interesting because I did a post at the end of last week called Boot to X. I don't know whether you guys saw my LinkedIn post, and I just put Boot to X, and I realized I probably should have put a picture on it as well, just to
I
sort of
thought
get
that
a
was
little.
something to do with Twitter, but
Did you? Okay. No,
yeah,
it wasn't anything to do with Twitter.
okay.
It was about the fact that there's lots of people at the moment who are quite interested in this concept of booting straight into Windows 365 or booting into AVD. So Microsoft basically have got the ability now to configure your Windows 11 machine to boot straight into a Windows 365 virtual desktop. So even though you do, I know you don't do Control Alt Delete anymore, but you log on to your Windows machine and it basically says, I'm going to boot you straight into your Windows 365 machine, pass those
Yeah.
credentials through and instant boot. So lots of people are quite excited about that because, from a user experience point of view, the user's logging onto their local device, but it's straight through and it's actually the remote desktop running. Obviously, Windows is still running on that endpoint, and hence it needs to
Mm.
be managed and patched. And that's why lots of people come to IGEL and they say, well, can you do instant boot? And we're like, yep, we can do instant boot. So you can configure IGEL. The first thing you see is you log on. We'll take those credentials, your Azure Active Directory credentials, and we'll put, oh, can't say that anymore, Entra ID credentials. We'll pass them through and we'll boot you straight into a Windows 365 PC. So then you've got very thin IGEL running boot straight into 365. The point I was trying to make last week is that um, we can do that for everything, right? So we can do instant boot into 365. We can do it for AVD, but we can do it for Citrix. We can do it for VMware. We can do it for Parallels. We could even do it for your web browser. So, straight in kiosk mode web browser, that's
Yeah.
all someone can use. The reason why I think it's quite interesting is if you think about what we're doing there is we're just trying to create a very, very we are just playing the role of a very low level operating system that the user can't really do much with, that is super secure, that just boots into a remote desktop. And if you think about what the Citrix DOS client was doing, it was exactly that, right? I mean, it was
Exactly
a
the same. Yeah.
tiny, tiny little operating system that just said, you know what, I don't want to give someone a command line DOS. I just want when this machine boots up, boot up DOS, make sure the keyboard, the mouse, the networking ports work, and then get into my Citrix session. So
That was
there we
25
go.
years ago. That was
Tw-
25 years ago.
25 years.
25 years later.
25 years. It's doing the same thing.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think what's really interesting about that is also that is just like one specific use case, right? Instant boot into X.
yeah,
There's then
yeah.
that other use case that well, actually, no, maybe I do need a desktop because this particular user is only using SaaS-based applications. And
Yeah.
I think what we're saying here is, back 25 years ago, it was very much a one-size-fits-all mentality. Everybody was going to
Yes.
use and boot to X, right? Whereas now we're going to have group of users over here, they're going to boot to X. Maybe we
Yeah.
have another group of users over here, they're maybe going to boot to Y, so they're going
Yeah.
to instant boot into another system because maybe we're migrating in between. I've then got people out in the field. Maybe they don't need Windows,
Yeah.
right? Maybe they don't have a Windows use case. Maybe they just need a couple of SaaS applications and, the time recording system. So maybe we could give them that. And I think the great thing to our story is one management system, one operating system, every use case.
No.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can instant boot that group of
Absolutely.
users. We can SaaS app only that group of users. Maybe we're going to have some users, M&A, right? I'm going to bring in my VMware Horizon farm. I'm going to bring in my Citrix farm. I've maybe got an M&A thing. I've got some Windows 365 users. As the endpoint admin guy, that is a lot of complexity. So how
Yep.
do I make that simpler? And that's why I think now what we need to look at, particularly with the disruption that we have, is we're going to have to start with the endpoint again.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. See, I told you he was a smart cookie, Indrajeet. I told you John was a smart cookie. He's good, right? I mean, he's just been around and
Yeah,
seen
yeah.
so many different things, right?
Yeah.
So Simon, I've got a question for you. And
mm,
introduce, is next year the year of VDI?
Actually, I was about to ask this question to you.
Ah,
We we had we had couple of round of discussions. Me and Simon discussed about how 2024 will be for end user computing and digital
Okay.
workspace. What will be the future for 2024, right? So maybe Simon first, you answer the question, and then maybe we'll ask John his view, like what will be the future, because he has seen the like overall evolution of like endpoints and the SaaS-based applications now, accessing SaaS-based applications from anywhere on any device, kind of a thing, right? So Simon first, you, and then maybe John, you answer your question.
Do you mind me going first, John?
No, you crack on.
You sure?
You go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Close your ears so that I don't influence anything that you were going to say, because
Okay.
it'd be good to get these. So hey, look, uh, I don't think there's ever going to be a year of VDI, sadly. And the reason I say that is that there is somewhere between 500 and 700 million desktops out there in the world, right? Corporate desktops. So every organization you go into, there's a load of millions and millions and hundreds of millions of PCs out there. If you look at the VDI market at the moment, it's about 50 million. So it's about a tenth of the size. So the number of virtualized seats that are out there is about a tenth of the size. Do I think it'll be the year of VDI, aka all of a sudden 500 million of us are going to start using VDI and not fat clients? No, I don't. Do I think that the VDI market is going to grow in the next 18 months? 100% yes. And I'm talking about on-prem VDI, uh, public cloud hosted VDI solutions, and also desktop as a service. Put all of that, put all virtualized desktops into a bucket. I don't care whether you're buying 365 or whether you're buying Citrix on-prem or Parallels or VMware on whoever it is. I do think that market is going to grow, and I think you're going to see more and more people moving towards. So I think we're going to see an increase in the number of seats of virtualized desktops. And the reason I think that is going to happen is that number one, large organizations do not want to go through another Windows 11 migration, and they want to do more with that. I think compliance around security and sustainability is going to drive a lot of organizations to look at virtualizing their desktop. And then in the SMB, the lower end of the market, service providers and desktop as a service have made VDI easier than it's ever been. So if I'm going to start a company tomorrow with 20 people, I can go to a service provider and they can look after my desktop, my virtualized desktop for me. It's very, very easy to do. If I'm a one-man band, I can put my credit card details in and I can spin up a Windows 365 desktop. And I know that doesn't matter where I go in the world, I've always got access to that desktop and my applications. So lower end of the market, it's got really, really easy and it's going to get even more and more cost effective. And at the higher end of the market, compliance, security, sustainability is going to drive it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm.
Shall I go next?
Go on.
Yes, please. So,
Okay. So Simon, just for the record, I completely agree with every point that you made there. What's going to happen next year? There's never been a year of VDI, and I don't think we'll ever see one. And to be brutally honest, I think whilst maybe earlier in my career I thought we should have a year of the VDI, I think I'm a bit wiser now and think actually VDI has always been use case, right? I think what you'll see is still the world dominated by Microsoft Office. In essence, our EUC challenges, if you like, how do I get Office plus those other line of business apps to my end users? That is where we are now. What I think you are seeing this year, and I think will continue next year, is the disruption in how I've traditionally done that. So I was a Citrix customer or I was a VMware customer. That would have been my standard route of getting those apps out to the end users. And then, Microsoft come along, they've done great things around AVD. and they'd end of life originally Office apps on a server OS, and you kind of see, right, the world's going to go AVD, and then bang, no, we're going to allow you to run Office apps. And I think that's been the key. Well, earlier this year, it's kind of the route was away from what we would have known as server-based computing back to, effectively Windows 11 on the virtual endpoint. Now that Microsoft announcement now that you can effectively still run Office on RDS, another disruption. I think Citrix are now starting to chart a course in the right direction. That Simon mentioned earlier, the pace of innovation that you're seeing from those guys right now is, I mean, even when I was there, you never saw the scale that they're ramping up now. And that is all down to requests from customers that they want to see in the product, which is, hopefully set them on a good course. And it's great to see Citrix now focused on what it does best. VMware obviously still got a bit of time to go, and I wish everybody who's involved at VMware at the minute the best of luck. And let's hope that they come back. We need that competition in the marketplace, right? Microsoft still pushing, and then you've got these upstart players. Parallels their rate of innovation right now, connecting into AVD and on premises. Yeah. What you're seeing the likes of Nerdio do. That overlay across the top. You've got the weird thing of AWS workspaces going on as well. WorkSpot, really now have, we never, you never used to have that choice, right? That choice just wasn't there. You were one house or the other. So I think the challenge then, if we look at what is the challenge of next year, is how do I translate that? And this is where people like IGEL and certainly XenTegra can play a part. Is every customer is different, right? I think Mark Templeton said at Disrupt last year. I remember watching it on one of his on the videos prior to my interview at IGEL, and Mark Templeton said something. I'm going to paraphrase now, something along the lines of, I'm sick and tired of seeing future of work white papers, because at the end of the day, everybody's work is different and every company's work is different. That there isn't ever going to be a one size fits all, right? So maybe that is our challenge for next year, right? Is how do we take all this disruption that's going on and actually architect solutions that work for customers, right? And by that, I mean customers and then the end user, right? What works for the end user? Got to keep them secure, but ultimately got to keep them productive, up and running and being available and on a device that's gorgeous and works and doesn't fail on me every 10 minutes. That I think is where we should head next year.
Yeah. And actually you made a very valid point. So as we see, there's a lot of technologies like you named, like Citrix, VMware, Microsoft AVD, Windows 365, then like Parallels, Cameo. There are a lot of solutions, and like for us as like or like for IGEL as a team, and like for partners like XenTegra, and even for the end customers, right? Because every customer, every end user is having different use case. So deciding on a solution for the end customer or end user, it when given a lot of choices, it will be very difficult for them. So our job is to, like, we have a lot of responsibilities on our shoulders, right? Where what is suitable or what is the solution for that particular end user use case. So that is like kind of our job, and I think which will give a lot of work next year, because now everyone is talking about something new. Like you highlighted a couple of things in last episodes. We talked about like AWS, like then like other solutions they came up with their new endpoint plus like their end-to-end like cloud PC kind of a solution, right? So we have a lot of things to do in next year, right? So I think next year will be we guys, like specifically people in end user computing space, will have a lot of work to do. That is my view, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. AI is not going to take our jobs just yet.
Not yet.
Good.
And never know, right? Now we have seen a lot of innovations in all these vendors, a lot of new solutions, and suddenly maybe something AI, like some portion of AI will come into picture, and like that, like portion of provisioning or like doing things by the administrator or like some technical person doing the things, those things will be removed and like everything will be done by AI. So never knows.
Do you know what? I think we'd gone nearly an hour in this conversation without mentioning AI once, so we've ruined it at the end.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Well, maybe we should do a separate
Correct.
AI one,
Separate.
but
Yes,
yeah.
separate conversation on AI. But I
Yeah,
think,
you're
yeah, so now we already like we have covered a lot of things, and it was a very good conversation, and it's like without any agenda, just like conversation between us. It was a nice discussion, I'll say. And I think, first of all, nice to meet you, John. This is your first episode, and like you have
Yeah.
given a lot of information to us, a lot of the stories, new things which people doesn't know, like our listeners doesn't know, right? And Simon, this is like this is not done. We are not going to leave you, though you're changing like your shoes or like you're changing your way ahead, but you'll be always here, like always there, or you're always here without any invite. You can jump in anytime in this particular podcast. And like now, then like we'll do like kind of a podcast with that partnership and like the ecosystem partnership and the overall entire solution along with IGEL, Control Up, and all related components, right, which can work together in a seamless way. So I think we are not going to leave you, but right, and you are always welcome in this podcast. And John, looking forward to continue this along with you and like your lot many things, lot it's your experience, what's going new in the market, what is like what IGEL is doing for the market, and that is what we're doing since long, right? Educating our partners, our like end customers, our listeners, right? So that is the job we have taken on our shoulders, and like let's take it ahead from here. And
Look forward to it.
I think, yeah. And with this, I would like to thank you, John. Thanks, Simon, for your time.
thank
And
you.
I'm not leaving you, Simon. Like, at least I need one more episode from you, right? Before you leave IGEL. So maybe we'll record one more episode, right?
Yes, we
Before
will.
you leave IGEL, to like cover up, right, what we did till now, or like maybe something which is summarizing overall our conversation till now. We'll do one more episode, and then I'll continue with John in upcoming episodes, and like we'll continue for a long, like on like lot many other things.
Sounds good.
So
Perfect.
thank yeah. Thanks, John. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks, Simon. Thanks a lot. Thanks for
No
your time.
worries. Thank you, guys. See you later.
Thank you. See you later.